Hey everybody, welcome to the stream. I'm Jesus Ramirez, your host for this very first Photoshop training channel live stream. We actually don't have a name yet. So one of the things that I'm going to ask from you today is what should we name this stream? This is going to be a weekly stream where we're going to talk about, of course, Photoshop. I'll be showing you how to do things in Photoshop. Eventually we'll have guests and it'll be people that you know, some people that you don't know, but it will be 1 hour all dedicated into Photoshop. So the working title is the Photoshop Hour, but let me know in the chat if you have any other ideas for the name of the stream. This stream is sponsored by our good friends at MSI. MSI is going to sponsor all the streams that we're going to do the Photoshop Hour once a week. So thank you, MSI, for being the sponsor for this episode and for all upcoming episodes. So big shout outs to MSI. We're going to talk a little bit more about MSI a little later on, but I want to get started right away. There's always a lot that I want to show you. And this is not going to be just a live tutorial. I would like for you to ask as many questions as you like in the chat. Let me know anything that you want to show. If you come up with a cool idea or have a question or something that's not clear to you, let me know in the chat. I'm going to try to keep an eye on it and I'll try to answer as many questions as possible. And hopefully this could be a valuable 1 hour for you. We're going to talk about masking and how to better create layer masks. Let me jump into my screen so that you guys can see Photoshop. And here it is. This is the image that we're going to work with today. And let's start right from the beginning. Again, I'm going to keep my eye on the chat, so make sure to ask any questions that you like. So, removing a background, right? And I know what you're probably thinking. You're probably thinking, well, this is going to be so easy. You have a flat background. It's going to be so easy to remove. And the answer to that question is yes, it's going to be so easy to remove. That's why we're starting here. Think about it as when you're learning math, you don't want to start with a complex mathematical equation. You want to start with a simple math problem so that you can understand the concepts and then you can apply those concepts to more difficult math equations. In other words, we don't want to run until we learn how to walk. And we're going to learn how to walk with this image and then we're going to work with a more complex image so that you can better understand how to remove backgrounds and create better cutouts, okay? So again, thank you so much for all the love. We have people from Bangladesh, United Kingdom, from everywhere. Thank you so much. Awesome. SF Creations has a question or a comment. He's saying that I upload very few videos now. Yes, I have been really busy with work and other projects that I'm very excited about. So I haven't been publishing as much, but I will try to publish more video tutorials soon. And the live streams once a week should help with the content. But anyway, what we're going to do is, and it says that my volume is a little bit low. Let me increase it up and let me know if the volume is better for you. But anyway, so this is the image, and the way that I like to start most cutouts these days, especially in Photoshop 2021, is by using Adobe Sensei. That's Adobe's artificial intelligence machine learning technology that will analyze the image, and then it will remove or find the background and then remove it. And you can do it really quickly by just clicking on the remove background button. If for whatever reason you cannot see that button, it's because you have a background layer. And if you have a background layer, you will not see the remove background button from the properties panel. All you need to do is click on this lock and you should see the remove background button. You can click on this and you can see that Photoshop will automatically remove the background. And that's a really, really good job. The machine learning technology is getting better every time. It wasn't as good when it was first released about a year ago. It's getting better with every update to Photoshop. And actually, if you check your Adobe Creative Cloud, there has been an update to Photoshop recently. So you might want to update Photoshop. But as you can see, it does a fantastic job. And it's not perfect by any means. Let me just make this into a solid background. And you can see that it does have a lot of imperfections, and that's okay. We can work with those imperfections to try to make it better. I see in the chat that we have someone, Deepshan, saying, I believe that he's in Photoshop 7. Obviously, if you're in Photoshop 7, you're not going to be able to use the artificial intelligence, but you can use some of the selection tools and some of the principles that I'm going to show you to remove backgrounds. And Alice asking how to remove multicolor backgrounds. We're going to talk about that next. So once you get to this point, all we really need to do is fine tune the image, right? This is fairly decent. You can see here that it's not terrible. We do have a lot of jagged edges, so let's work on those jagged edges. So I'm going to go into select and mask, and I'm just going to smooth out the edges. And so you can see what's going on. I'm going to go into the black and white view, And with the black and white view, you can see that by dragging this smooth slider, I'm smoothing the edges. So I just want to smooth out the edges that you see on this side. And I know that's going to affect the hair, but that's okay. I'm not worried about the hair. I'm just worried about the edges of her body. Then I'm going to increase the contrast to add more sharpness to those edges. And I'm going to press OK. And that gives me a better cutout. In some cases, you may need to come in with the brush tool and just simply paint with black or white to fill in the areas that Photoshop missed. And obviously you can take your time and look through the image to see what areas require work. In this case, since I don't want to waste too much time, we'll just call this good. I'm going to double click on the hand tool and fit the image to screen. And this is something that most people don't do. If you watch the Photoshop training channel, then you know that I like to do the selected mask in a two-step process, first working with the body and other edges, and then working with the hair. So once I've done that pass, I can come back into selected mask and simply click on refine hair. Now, if you don't know what refine hair does, that's okay. Let me explain that to you. In older versions of Photoshop, you have the refine edge brush tool, and you can simply use the refine edge brush tool to paint over edges so that Photoshop can analyze the image and better create the extraction. In newer versions of Photoshop, you don't have to do it manually. The artificial intelligence can recognize the head and the hair, and you can simply click on refine hair, and it will basically do the same thing. It'll paint over the image in those areas, just as you would if you were just painting on it with the brush. Now that we have worked on the hair, let me do that once again. I can just press OK, and you can see that now we have the straight edges around her body, the smooth edges, I should say, and there's the hair. Now, the hair doesn't look perfect. It doesn't look good at all, to be quite honest with you, but that doesn't mean that we cannot work with it. What we can do now is fine-tune the hair, and there's so many ways to go about this. It really just depends on your goal and what you're trying to do. One of the simplest things that you can do is simply duplicate the layer, and I just want to go through my thought process here. If you notice, I'm working with an image that has a white background. It's not necessarily white, but it's close to white. And one of the things that I can simply do is change the blending mode to multiply. And that basically hides the background and it keeps the foreground. So what I can do is I can come down here and place this layer, and I'll call it multiply so that you can see multiply. And that's going to help with the hair a little bit. But the problem is that it's also affecting the background, and the reason that it's affecting the background is because it's not the background is not completely white. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a selection like so, and I'm just going to create a layer mask. See that? And what I need to do now is simply use a levels adjustment layer, clip it to the layer below, and just brighten the background as much as possible, like so. And I can adjust it, but the hair still, those hair strands are still there. I can even select the actual layer and use the dodge and burn tools, in this case the dodge tool, to make these pixels here brighter so they disappear. See that? So that I don't necessarily affect the background, but the hair is still there. So what I can do now is I can come in here and just paint with black to hide certain areas. And you can see how the hair still comes through. So you can keep fine-tuning this accordingly until you get the result that you want. See how I'm blending the edges? So this is before and this is after. And I can continue doing that with the rest of the hair. So let me just paint with black. See that? See how I'm just getting back those darker hair strands like so. And if you have a Wacom tablet, and I actually have one right here. If you have a tablet, it doesn't have to be a Wacom. You can use the pressure sensitivity and do that as well. But the point is that it's going to require a little bit of work for you to get the appropriate result. And something that I should have mentioned earlier is that you don't have to do all this work until you actually find the background that you're going to place your image in, because your background can actually save you from doing all this work, because the background may hide some of those straight edges. So the question is, do I use a mouse or a tablet? I use both. Usually when I'm teaching, I use a mouse because it's just more convenient. But right next to me, I have my tablet. I have a Wacom Intuos Medium tablet. Here it is. And this is the one that I use if I'm like really trying to focus on details and things like that. But if I'm teaching, I use a mouse. Let me see if there's any other questions in the chat. Volume is fine for now. Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Is that my wife? No, that's not my wife. I'm not married. What's my name? My name is Jesus. If you don't know who I am, my name is Jesus Ramirez. Thank you for watching. Vector mask versus regular clipping mask. Well, they're completely different, right? A vector mask is a mask made of a vector, and a clipping mask is a mask made out of whatever the layer below you is. So use them whenever it's appropriate. Vector masks are great for elements like cars, buildings, anything with straight edges. Not so good for hair. Let's see. Cool. You're saying, oh my God, this is the first episode I'm watching. Well, yeah, this is the first episode that we have. So yes, this is the first time that everybody's watching this. Cool. So this is basically like the simple way of doing it, right? Or the, like I said earlier, the baby steps. But if we want to take now this to the next level, and how do we do it with something that has a colorful background? Well, to be quite frank with you, it's the same process. You just have to do more work depending on what the situation is. So I would say that most of the masking jobs are relatively the same, except for like that last 20%. That last 20% can involve a lot of fine tuning, a lot of different tips and tricks to make the hair look realistic. So let me show you what I mean by that. If you just click on remove background, Photoshop again will do a pretty decent job. It's not bad. In this case, let's just work with an actual real background so that we could see the proper workflow. So let me just look for, I have a photo here of Paris that I'm just gonna drag down, and now she's standing in front of the Eiffel Tower in Paris. Let me know in the chat if you've been to Paris. I was there about 4 years ago, and it is a really, really beautiful city. So with this image, things look pretty good. Obviously, if you zoom in, you're gonna see some imperfections. So this is really where you have to do all that fine tuning that I was talking about. You're gonna have to make decisions as to what you're gonna keep and what you're going to disregard. I think that a common myth when compositing or removing backgrounds is that you have to keep everything. You don't have to keep everything. You only have to keep the things that make your image look good. If there's strands of hair or flyaway hair that don't look good, remove them. It's gonna make your composites look unrealistic, unnatural, so just remove them. So in this case, you can just select the image here and then just remove all these flyaway hairs by painting with black. And you know, you don't have to keep everything. It's okay to remove things. So remove things that don't make your composite look good and keep the ones that make your composite look good. So right now I'm just removing everything that makes my composite look unrealistic and fake, right? Cool. But obviously, if you have soft edges, it's not gonna look too realistic. And actually, I think I accidentally painted over this area, so I'll paint with white to bring it back. And that's why you always want to work with a layer mask. So what do you do to bring back the hair that you missed? Well, there's two things you can really do, right? You can grab your tablet, and to be frank with you, it's easier with a tablet. You can do it with a mouse, but the tablet is just so much easier. You can grab your tablet, and you can create a new layer above everything else, and you can zoom in, and you can select the brush tool. When you have the brush tool active, when you hold Alt on Windows, Option on the Mac, you temporarily enable the eyedropper tool, and you can click and select the color. See that? See how I'm just selecting the colors that I'm clicking over or hovering and dragging over? And once you do that, you can make your brush size just 1 pixel. Click on this icon to bring up your brush settings. And from your brush settings, you can go into Shape Dynamics. And from here, you can do pen pressure. So that way, when you paint, notice how I can create these little lines. Actually, let me just do it with a solid white background and in a new layer with black so that you can see what I'm doing. So notice how I can just have these little thin lines, and the more that I put pressure on the pen, the more that those lines show. So then this will help me create flyaway hairs that will be better for my composite than the original ones, because the original ones are just too difficult to select, especially if you consider that the original background has all these different colors. There's not enough contrast between her blonde hair and the yellow background. There are just so many issues. So it's better to just create a new layer and, you know, select the color that is already found on her hair and just start painting like so. And just find a color that works for the background, for the image. And don't just use one single color, use multiple colors. Like so, just colors that are found in her hair, obviously. And just keep painting like so and follow the original flow of her hair. And obviously I'm going very quickly here. I normally wouldn't go this quickly. And I would spend a little more time fine-tuning the image, but I think that you get the idea. This is one of the things that you can do. And just select different strands of hair or different colors to paint your strands of hair. Don't make them all the same. But the point is that once you're done, you're going to have a much more realistic looking image than just simply, oops, sorry, I forgot to I forgot to turn off my phone. Let me just put it on silent so people don't call me while I'm talking to you guys. But see that just with even these few strands that I painted, the composite already looks so much better. Not necessary in this case, but in some cases, you may actually need to grab the blur tool and just blur the edges a little bit in case there's some depth of field in your image. So maybe the strands of hair are going to be a little bit blurry to match the blur that's actually found in the image. So you may need to come in here and just add a little bit of blur, whatever you need to do to match the hair strands that you paint in to the original ones. And another thing that you can do is you can actually take hair from another photo. So I have a, I should have had it up, so I'm just going to search for it here. I have a photo of, that I often use, and you might have seen me use it before in some tutorials, but I think it's a wonderful technique that everyone should know. So if you haven't seen it, I really think that you're gonna like this. But I have this image, and what I like to do with this image is create a brush out of it, because we have really fantastic hair here. Her hair looks amazing, and we can definitely mask that out, and we can create a brush out of it so we can paint hair back in fairly quickly. So what I did there is I simply cropped the image just to that area, and what I can do now is go into the channels panel, and from the channels panel, I can find the channel that has most contrast between the hair and the background, in this case, the blue channel. So I can duplicate that blue channel, and I can go into image, adjustment, levels, and I can just apply this contrast effect just so that I can get the hair to be black and the background as white as possible. You can also grab the dodge tool and you can just paint in these areas. I think my exposure is way too strong, so I'll reduce it because I don't want to hide the flyaway hairs. I just want to hide the background like so. So with the background hidden, I can now hit Control and Windows Command on the Mac and click on the channel thumbnail to load it as a selection. And from the layers panel, I can just create a solid color fill layer and make it black like so. And I want the opposite. I want the hair to be black, not the background. So Control I on Windows, Command I on the Mac. And this is what we have. What I can do now is I can make sure that my layer thumbnail is selected, not the layer mask. And I can define a brush preset. And I can just call this preset hair. And now, with the brush tool, I can go and find that preset. It should be at the very bottom. Here it is, hair. And check this out. If I open up a new document, let me just bring that over so you can see. I can now paint with that hair. Look at this. There it is. See that? And I'll make it black so you can see it better. So now I can come into my composite that I was just working on, and I can flip my, I can create a new layer. If I paint, the hair is facing the wrong direction, but I can go into the brush here, select the brush tip shape and flip on the x-axis, and now it's on the other side. Also, a new keyboard shortcut in Photoshop 2020, if you use the arrow keys on the keyboard, you can rotate the hair, see that? Or the brush rather. See that? I'm just tapping on the right arrow key and it's just rotating it. So what I'm gonna do now is simply hold Alt on Windows, Option on the Mac. When you have the brush tool active and you hold down that keyboard shortcut, you temporarily enable the eyedropper tool. I'm going to click on her hair here, and I'm going to click again to paint. Actually, I'm not happy with that. I think it might be too dark, so I'll try that again, and I'll paint. And I'm painting on the actual layer. I want to paint on the layer on top. There we go. And then drag it down. And then maybe use darker hair now and do it again. See that? See that? See how I created that now? Before and after. So see how I can start adding all this detail in there just by using a reference photo, using that reference photo to create a brush, and then painting on this layer. And obviously, if things are not looking okay, you can always transform the layer. You can mask it. I can create a mask, and just with a regular brush, I can just hide away the things that don't look good. So let me find just a regular soft edge brush, and I can just paint with black and hide the details here. And actually, I need to be on the brush tool, not the smudge tool or the blur tool. But anyway, paint away the stuff that doesn't work, and then just keep the stuff that works. And you can keep adding to this as much as you want. You can select that same brush. Remember, you can resize the brush, so I can resize it and then maybe even rotate it a little bit, and then just, try to get it to match the areas that I'm painting on. And obviously that didn't work that well, so let me try that again. But I think you get the idea. Like so. And actually that probably wouldn't work. So it does require a lot of fine tuning, but once you get it down, you should be able to create some pretty convincing composites, just because you're taking care of all these smaller details that you were never going to mask. It would have just been way too difficult to mask, so it's better to paint them back in either by hand or by creating a custom brush. Let me see if there's any questions in the chat. It says there that you have the same tablet. Let me see. What's my middle name? Let's see. I think people in the chat know what my middle name is. Let me know in the chat if you guys know what my middle name is. How would I go about cutting pet fur? Maybe we can talk about that. Let me see the time. We'll talk about that next. Cool. Did I go to school to study Photoshop? The short answer to that is yes. The long answer is not really. Once I got into school, I should say, I already knew more than most people there, including some of the people that were teaching. So I did go to school, but I already knew a lot when I got there. I just learned by watching videos. I learned by reading books. I used to follow people like Burton Roy, Deke McKellen, those kind of people. So I learned a lot before I got to school. I'm in Photoshop 2021. I can't give you the girl's number because I don't have it. The stream will be saved, so you can watch this later. Cool. So what we're gonna do now is, since you guys asked in the chat, is talk a little bit about how to remove fur from how to remove the background with a photo with fur. So I wasn't planning on that, so that should be fun because it should be an interesting challenge. But before we get to that, I just want to mention our sponsors once again. This stream is sponsored by our good friends at MSI. And also, let me just quickly take a couple seconds to talk a little bit about the MSI computers and equipment that I have. I have the MSI Creator 15 laptop. This is a laptop that I use to do my presentations if I do them live or when I'm traveling and things like that. So the MSI Creator 15 laptop is a fantastic laptop for creators. It has Adobe RGB at 100%, 100% Adobe RGB. As you can see here, all the monitors or screens are calibrated at factory, so it's a fantastic computer for color. So I highly recommend it for your creative work. You can check out the link in the description if you want to check out this laptop. Also, today I'm actually streaming from my new desktop. This is my current desktop, the Aegis Ti 5, the 10th generation of it. So this is actually the computer that I'm currently working on. So I highly recommend it. It's an awesome, powerful computer. Again, link in the description if you want to check it out. And actually, to my right here, I have my new MSI PS321QR monitor. This monitor is also Adobe RGB at 99%, and it's also pre-calibrated in the factory for excellent color accuracy. So if color is important to you, then this is a fantastic monitor for you to get. So that's the monitor that I have. The desktop is down here, and my laptop I'm not using, but it's here on the side. So those are the three pieces of equipment that I have through MSI. And again, thank you to MSI for sponsoring this stream. If you want to check out more about MSI, check the link in the descriptions. There's actually 3 links, one for the desktop, one for the laptop, and one for the monitor. So again, thank you, MSI. So let me go back into Photoshop and we'll continue working with the images. So the question in the chat was, how would you go about masking fur? So let me see. I know I have pictures of animals here in my Creative Cloud library. So I'll type in dog. And I mean, I've done a tutorial with this image, so you might have recognized it. But how do I go about masking fur? It really depends on the image, right? Everything depends on the image. The first step is usually to try the artificial intelligence. So why don't we try the artificial intelligence and see how that works? So I can click on remove background. And, you know, it does a fairly decent job. It's not great, but not bad. So, you know, this might serve your purposes. And actually, let's put it up against an actual background. We'll use the same Paris background just so that we can see what it would look on an actual background and not just guess. So there we go. There's the dog in Paris. So not a fantastic cutout, but we can actually probably do a better job if we use a different technique. If you go into the channels panel, you can see the different channels, right? And these are basically masks, revealing and hiding light. So you can look at the channel that has the most contrast between the foreground and the background. In this case, the red channel, you can see that there's a lot of white on the fur and the background has a lot of dark area. So we can probably work with this. So I can duplicate the channel by dragging it into the new channel icon. And then I can just go into image adjustment levels and try to make the background as dark as possible and the foreground as bright as possible. And only because that's what's going on. Right now the fur is pretty white, so we want to make it brighter, and the background's pretty dark, so we want to make it darker. But in some cases it might be the other way around. I can also use the burn tool, set it to shadows, and just get the shadows darker and not affect the highlights, or at least not affect them as much. So let me just try that. And this is looking pretty good. It's not that bad. And I'm not really worried about anything else besides the edges, because that's really the problem. Everything else could easily be fixed. So the edges are really the problem. And also I'm noticing here at the bottom that the fur actually turns black. So I'm just going to make a selection with the lasso tool and press Control-I on Windows, Command-I on the Mac to invert that so that the hair in that area is white. Or yeah, white. And I can just paint with black on these areas, and I can select the burn tool again and continue burning. And I could have done a better job in this area, but that's fine. But anyway, once we get it to right about, you know, something that looks like this, where we basically have our edges done, we can now take the lasso tool and work on the inside. And it's not going to be perfect. And that's one thing I want you guys to understand. We're not looking for perfection. We're just trying to get it good enough to see if it's going to work. And if it works, then spend time fine-tuning it. There's a lot of trial and error that goes into images. Like even with my experience, I don't always know exactly if something's going to work. Sometimes I try something and it doesn't work, and that's okay. I'll try something else. So with this selection active, I'm just now going to fill that with white, like so. And then I'm going to just make a selection out of everything else here, like so. And fill it with black. And oh my God, I see that I made a mistake there. That's okay. Alt on Windows, Option in the Mac to subtract. And now I can fill that with black. And this is pretty good. It's not perfect by any means, but this is pretty good. So Control on Windows, Command on the Mac, and click to load that as a selection. Go into the Layers panel, and from here, click on this icon to create a mask. So now when you zoom in, you'll see that the fur actually looks better. And you know, this is not really masking, but it's compositing, so I should mention this. So when you're compositing, notice that the original background for this image is really, really blurry. And actually, if you look at the dog, even his fur is blurry. Basically, the only thing in focus is his face. So when we composite this in somewhere else, we also need to blur the background. So filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Otherwise, the masking, no matter what, you know, how good our masking is, it won't look good because the fur is blurry. See that? So see, now that we blur the image, the masking actually looks a little bit better. So, and I think, you know, I think I might have over blurred that background. So let me just bring it back a little bit, something like that. But the point is now that that's, you know, looking a little bit better, I can come in with the brush tool and paint with black to hide areas and with white to reveal areas. So I'm revealing the fur in some areas. See that? And see how, look how good the fur looks over here on this side. And I can, you know, just continue revealing and concealing pixels depending on what the composite needs. See that? Like so. And to be frank with you, the ears over here need a lot of work. So, you know, just keep painting until you get the results that you want. It's a lot of fine tuning. Some of the things that I don't like about YouTube is that a lot of times YouTubers make it seem like things are super fast and, you know, one-click solutions and all this stuff. But in reality, it requires a lot of fine tuning and a lot of playing around until you get the result that you want. Let me see if there's any other questions in the chat. Am I getting paid by Asus and Intel? I am not getting paid by Asus and Intel, but MSI is sponsoring this video. So MSI is the sponsor. What software am I using for this presentation? I'm using OBS. Can I change my shirt? I'll change my shirt for the next one. I apologize for the shirt in this stream. What is the banana icon? I'll show you guys in a second. Cool. So the banana is just an Easter egg. If you hold shift and click on done, you'll add a banana into the toolbar and it's just something fun. So let me just show you a couple other things for the fur. So in some cases, like in this area here, it's going to be very difficult for you to get that fur. So like I said earlier, sometimes it's better if you just hide it. You know, you hide it and then just paint it back in, or mask it back in, depending on the situation, right? So in this case, let's try masking it back in. So just to show you something different. So from the brushes, here's a tip. You make sure that you enable the legacy brushes. If you click on legacy brushes here under that gear icon, you're going to get a new folder that says legacy brushes, this one right here. And that one has a grass brush right here, dune grass brush, this one here. And let me show you what that looks like. That one looks like this. See that? See how it's just, I'll make it black and white. That one just paints something that kind of looks like fur. See that? So what I'm gonna do is click on this icon and just uncheck transfer so that it, color dynamics, just so that it just paints with one single color. I don't wanna blend between foreground and background colors. And what I can do now is simply flip it X, I believe it should work. Yeah, flip it X, and then maybe rotate it a little bit by tapping on the left arrow key. Oops, I actually increased the size. That was the wrong key that I tapped on. I'm gonna rotate it even more. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, this should work, maybe more. Yeah, this should work. So what I'm gonna do now is go into the mask here and paint with white with that brush, and I can see if I can make it seem like we actually have fur. See that? Let me zoom in. And remember what we talked about earlier, in some images there might be some depth of field, so you might need to blur the mask, and this is what I need to do in this case, because if you remember, the fur was really blurry, so I can use the blur tool from the toolbar and blur the mask directly, just to try to match some of the depth of field that is actually found in the image so that it looks more realistic. See that? I just painted that fur back in. So as you can see, it wasn't just one single technique. I've used several techniques here. I used the select and mask, or the remove background button with artificial intelligence. I've painted over the mask. I used the channels panel. I used the custom brush to paint further back in. And that's really what you have to do in most cases. It's not going to be a one-click solution. It's not going to be just the artificial intelligence. There's going to be so many things that you need to do depending on the image that you're working on. So I just want to be clear that it's not one single solution, one masking technique. I think that you need to learn all the masking techniques and apply one or a combination of them depending on the situation that you're in. So that's really what you're doing. You're learning all these different tricks and techniques and applying them as you need to. For some reason, my properties don't show the selected mask. If you're having that issue, it might be because you see this little icon here on the top. You might be on the pixel layer. So even though I have my mask selected here, up here there's these two icons. And if you click on the one on the right, that's when you can see the selected mask and masking options. So you might have accidentally just hit this little icon and you can't see them. So even though I have my mask selected, I can't see those properties. But if I click on this icon here on the top right, it reveals them and you can see the selected mask. How long have I been using Photoshop? I've been using Photoshop since, I don't remember, so close to 20 years, something like that. Yeah, close to 20 years. Is there a keyboard shortcut for switching between fill and contour? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Like, how to merge, I mean, basically that's like what we're doing right now. The question is how to merge a background and foreground to look like one image. It requires so many things, right? So I know this is not the perfect mask, but let's just assume that this is a perfect mask, right? All I would need to do for it to be perfect is to keep doing what I was doing and, fine tuning these details. But let's just pretend that I did a fantastic job over the entire image. See that? It looks pretty good overall. What I would do now is create a black and white adjustment layer just to see the highlights and shadows and to make sure that they match. In this case, the dog is brighter than the background, so I probably would create a levels adjustment layer, clip it to the layer below so that this adjustment layer only affects the dog. And I probably would just darken the dog up a little tiny bit, maybe add a little bit more contrast before and after. See that? See how it feels now like the dog is more in the image now? So that's one of the things that I would do. I would also maybe saturate the dog a little bit more. The background has a lot of saturation, so just, maybe add a little bit of saturation to the dog. Also, I would put everything into one smart object. So I will select all the layers by holding Shift, clicking on the top one, and then clicking on the bottom one to select all the layers in between. And then converting it into a smart object. And from this smart object, I can treat it now as one image. I can go into the camera raw filter. And from the camera raw filter, I can add things like effects. And what I'm going to do is zoom in and just add a little bit of grain just to make the image look a little more realistic. The original image had grain, but not the background because we blurred it. So we got to add some of that back in. I might add a little bit of a vignette. I may also even add a little bit of an overall color effect, maybe even warm it up. Just apply these global adjustments so that it affects the entire image. And you can get a better result. I might add some texture just because the dog has fur and it just makes the fur pop a little more. But you can see the results before and after just by adding those simple adjustments. Another thing that you can do is if you want to create a stylus effect, you can go into the color lookup adjustment layer and then just scroll down through the different adjustment layers and see if there's one that works for your image in terms of style and look that you're going for. That way you can harmonize the entire image. I know this is an extreme look, but this will be an example of applying a color effect to harmonize the entire thing into one image. And obviously you can use the opacity and blending modes and things like that if you don't want to apply just the default color effect. But there's so many things that you can do. Like this one could be one, and I can just reduce the opacity so it's not so strong. And just applying an overall color look But before you apply the overall color look, you need to make sure that the brightness matches, that the saturation matches, that the colors are similar, and then you can start applying all these extra effects to try to create one single image. What is the difference between adjustment layers and adjustments from the image list? That's a really good question. So if I have a regular layer, and let me just make these into regular layers again. So you can select a smart object and click on convert to layers, and you will convert them to layers again. You will lose the smart filters, of course, but you still have access to the layers. So the question is, what is the difference between adjustment layers and the image adjustments? Well, if you go into image adjustment levels and you create a levels adjustment and you press OK, it's applied. I can't change it anymore. If I save and close this file, I can never go back to what I had before. Right now, I can, of course, press Control-Z on Windows, Command-Z on the Mac to undo. But that's basically the only thing I can do to remove that effect. And again, if I were to close my file, I could never go back. The adjustment layer allows me to apply that same levels adjustment layer, but it's non-destructive. In other words, I can always come back and edit it. So with this layer selected, I can just drag it out and delete it. And my original image is back. Or I can fine tune it to get a different result. And I can keep doing that as much as I want. I can close the file, I can come back to it, it doesn't matter. An adjustment layer always allows me to edit the adjustment or remove it entirely. Why is the dog's tongue blue? I'm not really sure. But if you wanted to make it red, all you need to do is create a new layer and select red from the color picker and make sure that you have a soft brush. Let me find my soft brush here. We're gonna make his tongue red because a lot of people are not liking his tongue for some reason. So we'll make it red. Change the blending mode to color, and there we go. He's got a red tongue. See that? We don't have to worry about it. There we go, red. It might be a little too red, but that's okay. If the tongue is a little too red, just reduce the opacity. There we go. I know, my shirt is hella trippy. It definitely is trippy. I'll remember not to wear this shirt again. Cool. Awesome. Let me know if you have any more questions in the chat. It's been awesome showing you these tips and techniques. We're going to be back again with more Photoshop next week, more tutorials, more live streams. I'm going to be doing one of these live streams every week. And I have a big, huge favor for you. And on my community page, I just asked the question, what should I name my new 1 hour weekly Photoshop live stream? I'm thinking Photoshop Hour. Have any better ideas? So let me know in the chat, or not in the chat, but in the actual community tab right here. Here's a question. Go in there now and let me know what you think we should name this brand new show. So the working title is Photoshop Hour, but I want to get your ideas. And in the chat, I'm going to paste the link to the community chat, or to the community link rather, for this page so you can leave your comments. So let me know what you think I should name this show. 1 hour worth of Photoshop. Photoshop Hour. Any better ideas? Let me know. Let me know what you think about the show, what you enjoy, what you didn't enjoy, and also give me a big thumbs up right now. I want to see if you enjoyed today's tips and tricks. Just simply click on the thumbs up button. If there's anything you enjoy, click on that thumbs up button. Let me take a look at the chat to see if there's any questions. And if there's no questions, then I guess we can move on. People are still talking about the dog's tongue. Okay, so people are talking about that he's a Chow Chow dog and a purebred, and this is why the mouth is blue. There you go. I didn't know that. Awesome. Yeah. So thank you so much, everybody, for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time for being here with me today. I'm going to be back, like I said, next week with more Photoshop tutorials, more live streams. It was a pleasure being here with you today, and I hope it was a pleasure having you here with me today. That's what I was trying to say. And I hope you have a wonderful day, evening, morning, depending on where in the world you're watching from. Thank you so much. Remember, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you again in the next Photoshop tutorial. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. Bye.